We begin in Benin, the West African country bordering Togo and Nigeria with a population of 13 million people. It was in the early hours of this morning, between 4 and 5 o'clock, when reports started to come in of a pre-dawn coup attempt underway. A group of soldiers calling itself the Military Committee of the Refoundation launching an attack at the official residence of the president. Gunshots heard ringing out, and they seemingly took control of state television too. This was the message they sent out.
The Military Committee for Refoundation has decided the Constitution of November 2025 is suspended. All institutions are dissolved. Political party activities are suspended until further notice. Benin's land, sea, and air borders are closed until further notice.
Well, there were immediate questions. Where was the president? Patrice Talon. Reports suggested he'd escaped. He'd taken sanctuary in the French embassy. That was denied by diplomats. And the coup seemed to fall apart. The country's interior minister said forces loyal to the president had prevented the plotters, and arrests of the group have since been made. This is what the interior minister had said a short while ago.
Fellow countrymen and women, on this Sunday, December the 7th, 2025, in the early morning, a small group of soldiers engaged in mutiny in order to destabilize the state and its institutions. Before this situation, the Benin armed forces and their hierarchy, faithful to their oath, remained republican. They fought back and allowed the situation to remain under control and to fail the maneuver. Thus, the government invites the population to keep acting as usual. Thank you.
It's also notable in the confusion that message was sent out first not by television or state TV, that was sent out via Facebook. Let's cross to Brussels. Let's bring in Nina Wilén, Research Director at the Africa Programme at the Belgian think tank, the Egmont Institute for International Relations. Welcome to the programme. Welcome to France 24, Nina. Let's begin. Your assessment of what's been going on in the past few hours.
Well, what we've seen is another coup attempt in Iran that has been particularly marked by different past 5 years. We've seen over the whole African until in 2020 and 2025, we have had 19 attempts and 10 or 11, depending on counting, have been successful. Really seeing a new coup wave on the African continent, and most of those based in West Africa. And 5 of the ECOWAS, the West African Regional Organization, they have 5 of the 15 members of ECOWAS successful coup 5 years. So we have seen that there is incentives for these coup plotters to continue attempting to take over, because they've also seen that all of the coup leaders that have taken power have stayed in power. So there is a trend of both a coup wave, but also of impunity with the coup leaders staying in power.
There'll be France 24 viewers trying to understand why Benin, why the president, why now. What's your take?
It's really difficult to assess at this moment, because up to now, Benin has been considered as the stable, democratic country in the region, even though there has been some authoritarian tendency. The sitting President Talon since he came to power in 2016. Notably, the opposition parties were not allowed to participate in previous elections, and now this year, 2025, just a month ago, the main opposition party was again banned from participating in the presidential elections, which will take place next year in April. But that's on the political side. He's still considered as a democratic country in a very unstable, undemocratic. But we've also seen that the security situation in the north of the country has considerably deteriorated over the past few years. And only this year we've seen 2 major attacks against the Beninese security in the north of the country, 2 of the largest ones so far in the country's history. One in January and one in April. And both of these attacks have been conducted by the Al-Qaeda affiliated jihadist group JNIM, which is sowing terror across the Sahel region, but also now then in the north of the Gulf of Guinea states. And Benin has been really the country that has suffered the most attacks. And we know that in April this year, there was one of the largest attacks against the security force of the country in its history. The official count is 54 soldiers killed, but JNIM is claiming more than that. And what was perhaps notable with that attack was that the government first came out saying that there were only 8 fatalities, which they then had to change later to fatalities.
This is very interesting, particularly when it comes to, you talk about, Nina, the jihadist threat, and reflected clearly by its bigger neighbour next door as well in Nigeria, what we've seen in the north with Boko Haram and its affiliates. This clearly affecting the president. I guess there'll be lots of questions. First of all, the arrests that have happened so far, we don't know amongst them whether this leader of this group, calling itself the Military Committee of Refoundation, its leader, Lieutenant Colonel Pascal Tigri, we don't know whether he's been included in that. And also, it's worth saying, do we know what his particular umbrage is? I mean, is he citing jihadist threats to... is he clearly there's upset with the president, and clearly there's going to be a question about where he is right now, as well as the president.
So we don't know much yet. We know that there has been arrests, but we also know that certain elements of plotters have fled the city center. So it's really hard to say right now what's happening to the different coup plotters. We know that they came from the Garde Nationale, so the National Guard, and that the Republican Guard are the ones who have been defending government, and that's also protecting the president and his family at the moment. In his, and what the coup plotters stated on the national broadcast that they emitted this morning was that they were dissatisfied with the military favoritism and with the fact that the government did not sufficiently warn the soldiers that had died, and soldier officers and that had died in the fights against jihadists in the country. And then that is, of course, coming back to the point I made earlier about the fact that the government, the attack in April this year, first only said that there had been eight deaths in the attack against the government or against the security, which of course was a political move to try to diminish the threat and the risks that were encountered by the security force did not go down well, and not with the military and not with the other security.
And it's very interesting. You're breaking up slightly, Nina. I'm going to persevere because it's very interesting, the context you're giving here. Let's talk about this group as well, this Military Committee of Refoundation. I mentioned them a moment ago. Just the optics of this is worth saying. A number of analysts have pointed out, you look at these images, this is not a confident-looking group of people. And I guess when it comes down to it, it's clearly a gamble. Would the rest of the forces turn to them or stay loyal to the president? Some analysts suggested it looks ragtag, and a lot is in the optics as well. What's your sense, just from watching things play out as well today, just how close it could have gone their way or not?
Again, it's very difficult to say something about. Coups are almost never, it's always a gamble, right? You never know if a coup is going to take off and if you're going to get enough forces with you. Clearly, this was not the case today. What we've seen in the other states that have experienced coup in the region is that it's often one of the closest people to the president that is the coup leader. For example, in Niger, it was from the presidential guard. And then he was also joined by people from special forces, which are often the best well-trained forces, and you would like to have them on your side. And in some cases, they've also managed to draw from different security forces like Air Force, Maritime, or the Navy, and gendarme, etc., etc. In this case, it seemed like the Guard, National Guard, were alone. We haven't seen any of the other security units trying to team up with them. So for sure, it's a gamble. And clearly, this time they did not seem to have be able to take over power.
Really good to talk to you, Nina. Nina Wilén, Research Director of the Africa Programme at the Belgian think tank, the Egmont Institute for International Relations. Thank you for your time tonight.